Shadows that lead to Christ. Hebrews 8, 1-2. Now the main point in what has been said is this: we have such a high priest who has taken his seat at the right hand of the throne of the majesty in the heavens, a minister in the sanctuary and in the true tabernacle, which the Lord pitched, not man. We're going to spend the next few days in Hebrews because it's such a wonderful book and gives us great insight to the connections between the Old Testament and the New, and more specifically the Old Covenant to the New Covenant. And this is the context in which is being shared here. And so the point of the book of Hebrews is that Jesus Christ, God's Son, came not just to fit into the earthly system of priestly ministry as the best and final human priest, but to fulfill and put an end to that system and to orient all our attention on himself, ministering for us first on Calvary as our final sacrifice, and then in heaven as our final priest. The Old Testament tabernacle and priests and sacrifices were shadows. Now the reality has come, and the shadows pass away. And so here's an illustration to help understand what we're going to unpack a little bit over the next couple of days. So remember, there's times when you were a child, and it may have happened to you. I know it kind of happened to me on one or two occasions. But just think that you're in a busy supermarket or shop, and for a moment as a child you've turned your back or you've gone to a toy, or you've done something, you're running around, or you're imagining that you're somewhere else, and you do something that takes you away from your mother's side. And when you turn around, your mother isn't there, and you look up and down the aisle and you can't see her, and you wonder what to do, and so you start walking off up to the end of an aisle. And just imagine in those moments that you see people walking past, but you see a shadow on the floor, and you can tell that it's your mother's outline, your mother's shadow. Now, when you look at that shadow, there's anticipation, but there's no relief, there's no relationship with that shadow. You don't go running up and fall on the floor trying to cuddle or communicate with the shadow. You look at the shadow and you think, oh, that's my mother. Or I think it's my mother. I'm sure it's my mother. If I just look round the corner, I'll maybe see her. And as you look round the corner, she comes round the corner, and you see her, and no longer are you so wrapped up with the shadow, you actually see her. And that's who you cuddle, and that's who you talk to and say, oh, I thought I'd lost you, and she communicates with you and just saying, oh, why did you wander off? Where did you go? It was okay, I just was up here. The reassurance is with the reality as opposed to the shadow, yet the shadow brought you some sort of comfort because there was a hope that it was hers and nobody else's. It was encouraging, and it led you to the reality. And that's the kind of analogy that the Old Testament system of sanctification and worship to God and relationship with God was a shadow for Christ. And that's what the Hebrews chapter, or a lot of the book of Hebrews is about. It's running the parallel to these shadows that brought comfort and brought hope to the people of Israel in the Old Testament, the sacrifices, the priests, the temple, those kind of things. Yet it was all pointing to Christ, who's in the heavenly tabernacle, who is the great high priest, who is the one and only sacrifice once and for all. He is that. And so the Old Testament people, and even sometimes us with our religious acts, we look at the shadows and we're relying on the shadows. Yet the intention for us was never to embrace the shadows. It was to follow the shadows in order to reach the reality. And here this Christmas, that's what Christ came to do. He came into the world to be the reality to all the things that had come before. And if you follow all these things, the shepherds followed the angels, or heard the angels call and told them where to go, and they went. The Magi followed the star, and they followed them in hope and anticipation. They followed the shadow of the star, which was controlled by God, as we looked at a few days ago. The angels, in a sense, are a shadow because they are just messengers. They were shining the light. They were pointing to where they go, but they're not God themselves. They're not to be worshipped. And so as the people were obedient and followed these plans and this course of hope, they found Jesus, the reality. No longer would they be subject to shadows and the hope or the this will do. It was now they have seen the reality of the shadow, and that's what Jesus came to be for all of us. And that's what the Hebrew passage and all of the Hebrew book shows us. It says they're no longer shadows. They were former things. They were just shadows of former things. And those shadows all come from Jesus, who is the reality. He is the source of our relationship. He is the source of our hope. He is the source of our sacrifice, our temple worship, everything.